Which Tar Heels on offense could possibly have breakout campaigns in 2024? Let's talk about it. Huddle up.
You don't want none! You don't want none!
Ready, break. What's going on, Tar Heel Nation? It is your favorite North Carolinian, Russ, the Tar Heel. And in this huddle, baby, we're going to take a look at the three Tar Heels on the offensive side of the football that I believe could possibly have a breakout season in 2024. But before we get into that, do me a favor, college football family and Tar Heel Nation, smash that like button, hit the notification bell, and don't you leave here without subscribing to the channel. Now, back to regularly scheduled programming. And for the sake of not stating the obvious, I'm going to leave Omarion Hampton and Bryson Nesbitt off of this list. We're all expecting them to both be integral parts of this Carolina offense, but I'm going to actually do some thinking on this one and maybe even step out on a limb or two. So let's start this thing off with one that might very well surprise some people. The first Tar Heel I have on my breakout watch list is going to be none other than the 6'5", 230-pound senior quarterback, Max Johnson. I fully anticipate that Max Johnson not only is announced the starting quarterback in week 1, but I think barring injury, Max is the starting quarterback for the duration of the year, and he takes the majority of the snaps, although I still believe that there's going to be packages in place for the athleticism of Connor Harrell. We're talking about a 23-year-old former 4-star quarterback who has played at LSU and Texas A&M for the past 4 years, and both of those programs were in utter disarray while he was there. Point being, it's not very conducive to the young man's growth. Now, here's Max's pedigree. Max went 88 for 150, good for a 58.7% completion percentage for 1,069 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 1 interception his freshman year. He followed that up by going 225 for 373 attempts, good for a 60.3% completion percentage for 2,815 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions his sophomore year, which was by far his best statistical year. Then he transferred over to Texas A&M, where he went 43 for 71, 60.6% completion percentage for 517 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. And then he started 8 games after the 5-star Connor Weigman's injury, and he went 118 for 190, good for a 62.1 completion percentage, which was good for 1,452 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions before being injured himself. Now listen, I'm not saying that we should necessarily anticipate the same type of results as we did when we were watching Drake May sling the ball all over the stinking yard. And I know that Max has had his own personal issues with staying on the field and staying healthy. But this kid has played under the lights in the SEC West for 4 years against some of the best defenses in the entire country. He's battle tested. The dude's 6'5". He's tall enough to look at his receivers, the guys in the slot, his tight ends, over those huge 6'8" tackles, and the big interior offensive lineman that we have, not named Willie Lampkin. And he's got a good amount of weapons at his disposal, to include Omarion Hampton in the pass game. He's got one of the best tight end rooms in the entire stinking country, and a diverse wide receiver room that has some reliable old heads, but it's also got some young dudes that can stink and pop, man. I'm telling you right now, I would not be surprised at all to see Max Johnson throw for over 3,000 yards with 25-plus touchdowns and less than 10 interceptions, especially against this stinking schedule. There's not a ton of juggernaut defenses in our path, man. He's not playing SEC caliber talent. I mean, let's just keep it a buck. So my first breakout candidate is going to be a guy that hasn't even been announced as a starting quarterback. Yes, I'm probably going to be stepping out on a limb like that, but I've been thinking that Max was going to be the guy for a minute now. The Carolina offense is going to need the very thing that he doesn't want to be referred to as, and that is a game manager. And if he can manage the game, Carolina could win a bunch of them facing these teams in their path in 2024. So first guy is going to be my man, Max Johnson. Number 2, the second guy that I'm looking for to have a breakout type season is going to be the 5'9", 195-pound senior slot receiver, Nate McCollum. Now, Nate's most productive season was his junior campaign at Georgia Tech, where he had 60 catches for 655 yards and 3 touchdowns. Kid wanted to play with Drake May last year. Nate decided to transfer over to North Carolina, where he was really hit or miss. Here's his first 4 games. First game that he played in, 1 catch for 8 yards and a double overtime win against App State. 15 catches the next week for 165 yards and a touchdown against Minnesota. Then he had 5 catches for 47 yards against Pitt, subpar game. Then he followed that up for against Syracuse with 7 catches for 135 yards against the Orange. The rest of the season after those stinking 4 games, through 8 games, 11 catches, 114 yards, and no touchdowns. Very hit or miss with Nate McCollum, and he had a terrible case of the dropsies against his old team, Georgia Tech. But I really expect Nate McCollum to have a good year in the slot as an older guy. I really do. And Max may be looking for him often in the slot, depending on how well that offensive line is able to hold up. I think Nate has a 650 to 700 yard receiving year with multiple touchdowns to have a really solid campaign for the Heels, basically getting back to the numbers that had the Heels wanting to bring him over from the Jackets in the first place. So I think 650 to 700 yards from Nate McCollum is a legitimate possibility, and he is going to be my number 2 guy to watch having a breakout year in 2024. And number 3, it's none other than my man, Darwin Barlow. He's a 6 foot, 220-pound former 4-star running back who is entering his 6th season in college. Somewhat of a journeyman, and he knows that he'll be taking a backseat to Omarion Hampton. It is the Omarion Hampton show in 2024 at the University of North Carolina. But he comes in expecting to get some carries. Carolina wants to take some of that load off of Omarion Hampton. I'll be honestly surprised if he gets another 1,500 yards or 15 touchdowns on the ground, because they are going to be able to reduce that load from him. That's what I'm anticipating. So, Darwin Barlow for his career, 993 career rushing yards on 181 carries, which was good for 5.48 yards per carry with 11 total touchdowns. Now, listen, I do not expect Darwin Barlow to get a ton of red zone carries unless Carolina is up big, okay? Like they should be up, pretty big against Charlotte and teams like North Carolina Central, maybe even James Madison. I think he's going to be a guy that maybe steals some carries in between the 20s to keep Big O's legs fresh down there around the goal line when Carolina goes in to score. But with that huge offensive line that the Hills will try it out, bro, if Darwin just logs 5, 6, 7, 8 carries a night at 5 yards a pop, maybe breaks 1 or 2, he'll be right around that 500-yard mark, that threshold right there. And that would be great for this North Carolina team to have another back rush for over 500 yards. British Brooks was second on the team last year with 375 yards on 74 carries and 2 touchdowns. And obviously 100 of that was in that first game against South Carolina. But with the Hills trying to save those legs, I think those are some good numbers to expect from Darwin Barlow. And it would be somewhat of a breakout year for him because those would be career numbers if he could get over 500 yards rushing. And it would be great for this North Carolina team to maybe take a couple of carries off of Omarion Hampton's plate, especially for later in the season when we might need him. So, Max Johnson, right? Nate McCollum, and my man Darwin Barlow are the three players wearing Carolina blue in 2024 that your boy Russ is anticipating or looking out for, if you will, to have a breakout season. So let me know what you think about my guys, Tar Heel Nation, college football fans, ACC fans. Am I onto something? Or do you think that there should be a couple of guys or maybe even just one guy swapped out? Comment in the comments section. And like I said, if you haven't already, man, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. Look forward to chopping it up with you guys as football season draws near. And we'll catch you on the next one, baby.